The garbage dump was on fire, and Kang Do-hyun was the only person walking toward it. Everyone else was running the other way. Scavengers, kids, an old woman dragging a cart of scrap metal she refused to let go of even as she screamed. Because 40 feet ahead of them, something that used to be a wolf and was now mostly rusted plating and too many legs had just crashed through the north fence of the Ashfall Yard, and it was angry. A slaghound, mid-tier rift spawn, the kind of thing that shows up in a proper hunter's patrol log as a Tuesday. Do-hyun had a rolled-up piece of paper in his hand. That was it. That was the whole plan as far as anyone watching could tell. A skinny guy in a scavenger's coat, walking calmly into a monster's line of sight, holding what looked for all the world like a permit slip. "Kang, are you insane?" Someone was screaming behind him. He didn't turn around. The hound's head swung toward him. 6 eyes, all of them wrong colors, all of them locking on. Do-hyun exhaled, unrolled the paper, and threw it. Not at the hound, past it, at a rusted lever bolted to a drainage grate nobody in the yard had thought twice about in 3 weeks. Because why would they? It looked like flood infrastructure, boring, ugly, exactly the kind of thing you stop seeing after the first day. The hound lunged. The grate gave way. 12 feet of irrigation channel that had never once seen water swallowed the beast whole. And the lever, the one the thrown paper had struck dead center, dropped a second grate on top of it, with a clang that rattled every sheet metal roof in the yard. Silence. Then muffled, furious scratching from underground. Do-hyun looked down at his empty hands like he was mildly disappointed he didn't have another form to fill out. Somewhere behind his eyes, where only he could see it, a small, pale window flickered into existence. Territorial hazard neutralized. Development points plus 40. A 12-year-old girl named Nabi, clutching a dinted pot she'd been about to lose to the fire, stared at him like he'd just performed a miracle. He had not performed a miracle. He'd performed zoning. But to explain why a man with a combat rating of exactly 0 had just casually soloed a rift beast using a sewer grate, we need to go back 3 weeks. Because 3 weeks ago, none of this existed. Not the grate, not the trust on Nabi's face, not the 17 other things quietly wired into the ground beneath the Ashfall Yard that everyone had walked past 100 times without seeing. 3 weeks ago, Kang Do-hyun was standing in front of the entire graduating class of Verrow's Central District, about to have the worst day of his life. Assessment day worked like this. You turned 18. You stood in front of the gate. The gate read whatever the fracture had rewritten into your soul, and it told you, and everyone else, out loud on a floating screen the size of a barn door, what you were now worth. Most of Do-hyun's year got warrior, ranger, a couple of mages, one extremely smug girl who pulled paladin and immediately started composing her acceptance speech. Combat classes. The kind that mattered now in a world where the old jobs, banker, teacher, city planner, had all quietly become jokes you told about the world before the fracture. Do-hyun stepped up. The gate hummed. The screen lit. Class assessed. Administrator. Combat rating, 0. Special note, no verified combat applications on record. For a second, nobody laughed, because nobody could quite believe what they were reading. Then somebody did laugh, and after that it was less a ceremony and more a public execution with extra steps. Administrator. Not even a real support class, the murmuring went. This wasn't healer, wasn't buffer, wasn't anything with a battlefield use. This was a paperwork class, a relic. Somebody's idea of a joke the fracture had decided to play on exactly one unlucky person in this graduating class. And that person had to be him. Here's the world rule nobody explained kindly. Because nobody in Verrow explains anything to you kindly once your number comes back 0. The city runs on a ration formula tied directly to verified combat output. You fight, you eat. You don't, you're reclassified as non-essential and reassigned to a reclamation zone. The parts of the city too poor, too damaged, or too monster-adjacent to be worth defending. Where you get 60 days to somehow generate enough value to justify keeping your citizenship card. Or you get walked out past the walls with a 2-day ration pack and a polite wish of good luck. Do-hyun did the math in his head while an official stamped his transfer papers. 60 days. 0 combat rating. 1 duffel bag. Great, he thought. End of the world, and I get the one class that comes with a spreadsheet. He didn't say that out loud. He'd learned fast that morning that sarcasm doesn't improve your combat rating, and it definitely doesn't improve a bureaucrat's mood. The transfer slip listed his new address as Ashfall Yard, Reclamation Zone 6. He'd heard of it. Everyone had. It was the punchline you used when you wanted to describe the worst place a person could end up without technically dying. The yard smelled like it sounded, like something that had been burning slowly for years and never quite finished. Scrap piled in drifts taller than the shacks people lived in. No wall on the north side, just a sagging fence and a lot of prayer. Maybe 300 people, all of them here for the same reason he was, a status window that had ruined their week. An old man with a burn-scarred forearm, everyone called him Old Bory, and he ran what passed for a scrap-sorting operation, sized Do-hyun up in about 2 seconds flat. New? New. Combat rating? 0. You? Cook. 0 adjacent. Bory snorted. Welcome to the bottom of the bottom, kid. Rules here are simple. Rook collects on Thursdays. You pay, or he takes it out of your ration crate. Nobody's coming to stop him, because nobody with a badge cares what happens down here. Who's Rook? As if summoned by the question, and honestly, in the Ashfall Yard that's usually how it worked, a broad-shouldered man in a looted hunter's coat rounded the corner with 2 friends, already looking bored with the whole errand of extorting people who had nothing left to extort. New meat, Rook said, not even glancing at Do-hyun properly. Ration crate. Now, or I take the whole crate instead of half. Do-hyun looked at him, looked at the 2 friends, looked at his own single duffel bag, which contained exactly 1 ration crate, a blanket, and absolutely no leverage whatsoever. 0 combat rating, he thought. But nobody ever assessed my rating for being annoying. You know, he said pleasantly, I'd love to pay you. Truly. But I've been a resident of this zone for approximately 11 minutes, and I haven't actually been assigned a plot yet, which means, technically, I don't owe zone dues to anyone, including you, until my registration clears. Rook blinked. What? Municipal procedure. I don't make the rules. I just, apparently, am the rules now, professionally. He tapped his own chest. Administrator. It's a whole thing. It bought him exactly 4 seconds of confused silence before Rook decided he didn't care about procedure and reached for him anyway. And in those 4 seconds, Do-hyun learned 2 things that would matter a great deal over the following weeks. 1. Threats didn't work on him the way they worked on everyone else here, because he genuinely, professionally, did not understand fighting as an option. It had never once been on the table for him, so his brain had skipped straight past fight or flight into a third, much weirder category: negotiate, stall, or file paperwork. 2. And more importantly, When Rook's fist was 6 inches from his face, a pale window flickered up in his vision that nobody else could see, and it wasn't a combat prompt. Unclaimed territory detected. Ashfall Yard. Status: Ruin. Tier 0. Administrator privileges available. Claim territory to unlock territory panel. He had, in that instant, considerably more pressing concerns than reading a status window. Rook's fist connected with the duffel bag. Do-hyun yanked up just in time, which was not dignified, but which also was not his face, and the two of them went down in a heap of scrap metal and bruised pride, mostly Do-hyun's. But he didn't forget the notification. Guys like him, spreadsheet guys, don't forget things like that. That night, sitting against a wall with a split lip and absolutely nothing to show for his first day, except a new appreciation for how much a punch actually hurts, Do-hyun finally opened the window properly. Class: Administrator. Function: Territorial Development, Resource Organization, Citizen Management. Combat Application: None, Direct. Indirect scaling available via Territory Growth. Available Action: Claim territory. Claim territory. Sure. Except the Ashfall Yard wasn't unclaimed. It belonged to the city, on paper, the way a landlord owns an apartment he's never once set foot in and has no intention of fixing. Every scrap of it was legally Verrow's problem, and functionally nobody's problem at all. Which gave Do-hyun an idea so boring, so aggressively bureaucratic, that it took him embarrassingly long to be sure it would actually work. Reclamation zones, per the city charter, which he had, of course, actually read, because apparently that was just who he was now, could be formally registered as self-administered districts if a resident filed a notice of territorial claim and the district met a threshold of, quote, demonstrated self-sufficient management. Nobody had ever bothered filing one. Why would they? The zones were dying places. Nobody wanted to manage them. Nobody wanted them, period. Nobody except, apparently, the one man in Verrow whose entire soul had been rewritten to want exactly that. He filled out the form by candlelight on the back of Rook's crumpled extortion ledger, which he had, in the chaos of the fight, accidentally on purpose ended up walking off with. Notice of territorial claim, filed. Territory founded, Ashfall Yard. Tier 0, ruin. Population, 0 registered citizens. Territory panel, unlocked. A second window unfolded beneath the first, and for the first time since the gate had ruined his life, Do-hyun felt something other than dread looking at a status screen. Territory panel, Ashfall Yard. Development points, 0. DP generated by, registered citizen labor, resource production, trade volume. DP spent on, ordinances, territory-wide passive effects, / public works, structures. Note: Administrator's personal stats scale with aggregate territory strength. So that's the joke, he thought, and for once it wasn't bitter. I don't get strong. The city gets strong. I just have to build one first. Which was, he had to admit, a genuinely insane thing to attempt with 300 starving people, one collapsing fence, and a Thursday deadline before Rook came back angrier and with more friends. He looked over at old Bori's fire, still burning low across the lot, and for the first time in 3 weeks, Kang Do-hyun smiled like a man who'd just found the one loophole in a system built to bury him. 60 days, he thought. Let's see what a spreadsheet class can do with 60 days. Registering citizens turned out to be easier than expected. Once he stopped calling it registering citizens and started calling it getting fed. Old Bori signed on the second he heard the words shared ration pool. Nabi signed on because she was 12, and Do-hyun was the first adult in a month who'd asked her name before asking what she could carry. A former quartermaster named Han discharged from the city watch for the crime of having a family member with a bad class role, signed on because organizing supply lines was, in his own bitter words, the only thing I'm still good for, and apparently nobody in this city agrees except you. 4 citizens. It wasn't an army. It generated, per the ledger Do-hyun was now compulsively updating, exactly 6 DP a day. DP threshold reached. First public works unlocked. Available, Raincatcher, produces clean water plus 2 DP per day. Cost, 20 DP. Not glamorous. Water, instead of trucking it in from the taps 3 streets over, that charged yard residents double. But it was infrastructure, and infrastructure, Do-hyun was starting to understand, was the only weapon his class actually had. He spent the next 4 days building it, badly, with Han's engineering knowledge doing most of the actual work, while Do-hyun mostly filed the mental equivalent of permits. And on the 5th day, when Rook came back, as promised, as threatened, with 2 more friends this time, and a much worse mood after hearing a rumor that his new meat had walked off with his ledger, he found something he hadn't expected. He found people who weren't scared of him anymore. Because Do-hyun's first real ordinance, the communal notice board, dirt cheap at 15 DP, mostly a scrap of painted plywood with a very official-looking city seal Do-hyun had, let's say, creatively reproduced, did something nobody in the yard had ever had before. It let them coordinate. Openly. Publicly. It listed, in Do-hyun's careful handwriting, exactly how much Rook had extorted from every family in the yard over the past year, sourced directly from his own stolen ledger. Rook stood in the middle of a crowd that, for the first time in longer than any of them could remember, wasn't looking away from him. It wasn't a threat with teeth. Do-hyun didn't have teeth. It was a threat with paperwork. And paperwork, it turned out, could still make a bully's blood run cold. Because bullies never expect the weak ones to fight back with the one weapon nobody thought to take away from them. Information. Rook left. He was not happy about it. He muttered something about the Chalk Row Combine hearing about this, which meant nothing to Do-hyun yet, but which would mean quite a lot in about 2 weeks. For now, though, the Ashfall Yard had its first small, genuine victory. And that night, the DP ticked over past a number Do-hyun hadn't expected to hit so soon. Population growth detected. +9 registered citizens, word of mouth. Territory Tier 0 stability. Rising. Which brings us back to the fire. 3 weeks after assessment day, with the Raincatcher built, the drainage grate quietly repurposed into a containment trap the moment Han pointed out how easy that would be, and 13 registered citizens counting on him, Do-hyun stood in front of a slaghound with a rolled-up piece of paper and did the one thing his class had always been able to do and nobody else had ever thought to try. He managed the problem, instead of fighting it. The crowd that gathered afterward, people who 3 weeks ago wouldn't have crossed the street to help a 0-rated stranger, looked at him differently now. Not like a joke, not even quite like a leader yet. Like a question they hadn't finished asking. Nobby tugged his sleeve. How did you know the grate would hold? I built it to hold, Do-hyun said. I just didn't tell anyone it was also a trap. Efficiency. She laughed, and for a second the yard sounded almost like a normal place, before the second notification arrived. The one Do-hyun hadn't been expecting, the one that made him go very quiet, very fast. System alert! Secondary incursion detected. Location, Sector C. High threat level. Do-hyun stared, the laughter in the world narrowing around the message like a closing door. Achievement unlocked. First territorial defense, 0 casualties. Administrator's mandate, +1. Notice, Administrator class instances currently active worldwide, 1. 1, he thought. There's only one of us. That wasn't supposed to be possible. Trash class or not, joke or not, in a world of millions of awakened, there should have been others. Somewhere. Anywhere. He was still staring into space, turning that number over in his head when, 3 rooftops away, unseen by everyone still cheering below, a hooded figure crouched in the shadow of a rusted water tower, watching him with an expression that had started the evening as bored professional curiosity and had, somewhere around the sewer grate, become something closer to disbelief. She'd been sent to the Ashfall Yard to confirm a rumor Frostspire Tower had dismissed as nonsense, that a dead class had resurfaced, in a garbage dump, of all places, on the losing end of a slaghound encounter. She had not expected to watch a man with 0 combat rating outthink the monster instead of running from it. She had definitely not expected the strange, unwelcome flicker of hope that came with it. The first she'd let herself feel since the day Frostspire had thrown her away. Yoon So-yeon pulled her hood lower and did not